Anthony, how
What's
are you,
up?
sir?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. It has been, man, it has been a long time. Both look at both of us. Got gray in the beard now. I mean, it is wow. Time flies, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Wow. Well, I can't say
How
thank
you
you enough for
been?
doing this, man. Oh, well, I mean, a lot better lately. Things have been it's been a difficult year, obviously, with getting sick earlier in the year and all that. And I mean, I was talking to my sister the other day about it, and I didn't realize that things were as bad as they were when I was in the hospital. So I guess that was a good thing I didn't hear everything because probably would have made me even more nervous. Because at one point the doctor did tell me I was almost going to be put on a ventilator. So that then he just walks out of the room. He's like, "All right, see you later," and it just scared the daylights out of me. So yeah, doing good, doing a lot better, trying to chase this dream of getting into the sports media. So washed up, not even a has-been, just people that never were can talk about people like you guys that played and actually think we know what we're talking about. So, but yeah, I can't say thank you enough for doing this, man. It is, like I said, I've been doing this podcast here for maybe a couple years, maybe longer now. It's usually just
Really?
me talking about something. And uh, I've only had one other guest on here, a guy that used to be a former coach on the college and pro level and a scout as well. So I know it's your summer. I know you're a family man. You got a lot of things going on. So for you to take the time to reach out, or to not even reach out, for me to you to do this for me, when you get absolutely nothing out of this whatsoever, it means the world. So I can't say thank you enough. Thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate
Man. Oh man, no problem. I mean, we grew up together. Yeah, you like my little brother, so
it.
you
Well,
know.
I thank you. I appreciate that, man. That really means a lot. And when you reached out to me, when gosh, I think it was February once I got out of the hospital, I really meant a lot. That was really cool of you. Thank you.
Man, no problem. I wish I would have found out, knew it sooner. I would have reached out, tried to come see you.
Yeah, my sister, by the way, she says hello. She got married recently. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't, but she what's the guy's name?
Tony, Tony Rodriguez.
Yes.
I've only met him once. They were here a couple weeks ago for his business partner was getting married. I picked him up at the airport and we went to the bar that he owns, hung out there for a little bit, and I dropped them off and they caught a flight to Mexico the next day for the wedding they were going to. So, but yeah, seems like a cool dude. I only met him one time, but yeah, it's just crazy to hear to think that my sister's married. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you know her
She
just as
got
well
married
as I
before
do.
Greg.
Yeah,
But
right.
Greg is still out there, so she beat
Yes.
him.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So, all right, let's get into this here. I'll try to, there's a few things I want to cover. Obviously, the whole with you being a former athlete at the college level, with the whole NIL thing and being a current coach, I definitely want to get into that. But let's take it all the way back, if we could, to the beginning, way back when we first started talking. When you were getting recruited, what made you pick Texas? What was it about Austin and who else? I remember you were considering Colorado back then, and I don't know if you remember this, but they had a guy who played on their team in '94 when you were a senior that wore 94 who had the same last name as Hicks as you back then. I don't know if you remember that, but I
Oh,
some strange reason that pops in my mind and I remember that now.
um, so yes, Colorado was my number one, and at the time, A&M was like my number two.
Really?
It was, I know, and literally the allure to both of those. Granted, Colorado was a premier team at the time, had just won the national championship, legendary head coach. And so, when you turned on the TV, you saw Colorado, you saw the Cordell Stewart and Rashawn Salam and all those guys.
Oh yeah.
So you're like, I'd love to be a part of that. And they were recruiting me hard. And so, I was feeling the love. And but Texas was always there, always there. And so the turning point was really out of my control.
Really?
I got to, yeah. So it really started when McCartney retired from Colorado. And this is when things really started to turn. So
Okay.
McCartney retired from Colorado. The new coach comes in, which was Neuheisel. And Neuheisel comes and my recruiting guy says, "Hey, letting you know, Newhousel doesn't want you.
Oh,
He says
okay.
he thought I was too small and too slow.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so Newhousel, and so the guy who's recruiting me, then he gets let go. He ends up at Oklahoma State.
Okay.
So now he's really pressing me. Hey, Oklahoma State wants you. I've already told him everything about you. So he's really pressing me to come to Oklahoma State, which I wasn't, that wasn't even on my radar, to be honest.
Sure.
So now I'm like, okay, I know where I'm going. I'm going to A&M. The guy who recruited me at A&M, we're going well. It's going well. Sure enough, I go, Coach Z calls me and Dexter into his office one day, and he says, all right, I'm going to tell you something. Hicks, A&M is about to drop you. They just called me, and they said that you weren't fast enough. I said, okay.
Hmm.
And so he says, so they about to drop you. He says, you need to go to Texas. I'm like, what? Like, really? And at the time, I mean, Texas was on the radar, but it wasn't like I wasn't really committed to go.
Sure,
I already had went down there for a game, and I actually picked the Colorado game on purpose because I was going to see Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got in trouble for that because my coach, that was my recruiter, was like, you can't cross the 50. The Colorado coaches were like, we can't talk to you.
Oh.
And so I went there solely to see Colorado.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, this is how messed up I was just like I go back and I'm like, God, it's so wrong. But I know it gets done. So I guess I don't feel that bad about it. But, at the time I had a cousin that was already at UT. Okay. So we went down and hung out with her and the players, and I got to meet some of the guys. And so I'm like, okay, the dudes all the guys were really cool. Phil Dawson was there.
Oh yeah.
So, got to hang out with Phil and everything. So after the Colorado game, I'm like, oh, this was cool, fun. Austin's fun. It's close. And I had really no qualms about it. But I was still hardcore Colorado at that time. So when I get the message that Colorado's going to drop me, and now A&M has just dropped me, and Coach Z's telling me you need to go to Texas. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, do I really want to do this? I didn't like Makovic, so that was a big strike.
Oh, wow.
I just
okay.
Yeah, I didn't like the way my parents didn't like the way he kind of came off, and honestly, a lot of the players didn't really like him. Now, from just a knowing the game, knowledge of the game, running an offense, I mean, his offense proved to be, extremely well. He ran it when he was the offensive coordinator with the Kansas City Chiefs. And the years that he was there, offensively we were really good.
Yeah, that's what I heard about.
About him.
That he was.
And we had the right pieces too.
Yeah, definitely. I remember. I've heard. I basically became a Longhorn fan once you went there and started paying attention to Texas. So they have you to thank for my fandom. But I heard that about Makovic, that he didn't necessarily connect very well with either, like you said, with your family or donors or people at UT that were the kind of the movers and shakers, but like great play caller, great scheme, like all that, but just there was a big disconnect. And obviously, he got fired a couple years later after you got there, and then Mac Brown came in. But wow, I had no idea that all that happened during your recruiting. I remember the Colorado thing, and here's another crazy thing that I was thinking about yesterday, and I was driving around. We were on the phone talking, and either you were watching the game when Cordell Stewart had the Hail Mary to Westbrook on TV, or it must have just happened, because that's how I found out about it. Because this is before text messages and all that. So you were like, did you see that? And I was like, what are you talking about? Because I was watching a different game. Then I flipped to it and saw it. I was like, oh my God, he threw that thing like 75 yards in the air, almost 80. It's like, that's incredible. What an amazing win. So, but yeah, I had no idea that all that happened. That, you know, was there anybody else that you were considering? Because it doesn't sound like Texas, like you said, didn't really hit things the right way right off the bat. Was there anybody else, or was it just like, well, I'll just go this and see how it works?
Well, you know, it was and that was the one thing. Texas stayed true the entire time. They were always there. It was just they never dropped me. Because so now, once all that happens, a lot of the other schools, because you know we played until almost December. Well, schools are like, hey, we really need you to, you know, to commit, or you know, our board is getting filled. You know, so if you're going to make a commitment, you need to make it now. And I'm just like, I'm not making a commitment until I make an official visit. Well, when do you want to come for a visit? I'm not coming for a visit until after football season. Right. I'm like, I'm committed. I'm committed. You know, my weekends, I don't want to have to take a visit. Plus, some of our games are on Saturday. I'm like, this is just not going to work.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm like, if you want me, you got to wait until after we're done playing. And I'll, you know, consider look. So that started to weed a lot of things out. I knew I didn't want to go to Tech. I knew I didn't want to go to SMU.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I can't remember really where OU fit in it. You know, what you don't know is that my cousin's Billy Sims. So
wow. Okay.
So Billy said, so I would talk to him and he's like, man, you need to come down and be with them Sooners. And I'm just like, I don't know. And
that's crazy. The fact that Billy Sims, who's one of the most legendary players in OU history, Heisman Trophy winner, is family. That is beyond shocking. That's even more shocking than everything you just told me 5 minutes ago. The fact that somehow, some way, because I mean, every time you see him at the Heisman ceremony, he's always yelling Boomer. And I mean, he's just, you know, OU front and center. So I'm just, wow. Okay, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank God you went to Texas. I couldn't have been an OU fan, Hicks.
Man, me neither. I'm telling you. Like, I look back and I'm like, I cannot believe I almost was a Colt Aggie or an OU Sooner. Like, this is like, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, this could have been really, really bad.
Man.
So then, you know, so a lot of these decisions are starting to happen without me even knowing.
Sure, right? Yeah.
I don't have control. Yes. So, you know, but a lot of schools are still right there. Like Rice really wanted me. Again, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Baylor wanted me, but I'm like, I ain't going to Baylor. So all these other teams really wanted me, and I'm just like, I'm not going to any of these other schools. And there was a couple that were out of state, but I think, you know, a lot of them started trying to figure it out. But Texas was there, so I was like, okay. Makovic comes to the house, and my parents and them are like, no. Like, we don't like him.
Wow.
But we really liked who my position coach, who was the defensive coordinator, Coach Gary Darnell. Like, he was personable. He had met my parents several times. He had come up to the school. Like, he was like the guy who was really recruiting me. And he would always tell me what his plans were and why he was recruiting me, and this is what he has, and how I would fit perfectly, and what he already had. So, you know, all in all, what ends up happening is I go to Austin, have my official visit, which I already knew, you know, that was already set up. And of the schools that were left, and then once I kind of figured out, like they were talking about how these are living quarters, and we're going to be joining the Big 12. And
that was right the next
year.
So
all these things started kind of looking really, really appeasing. And then so I have my visit. That's great. We talk about, you know, we see what the future kind of holds for Texas around the guys. I'm just like, okay. Well, I was supposed to go to Hawaii the following week. I wasn't going to consider Hawaii, but it's a free trip to Hawaii.
A free trip, right? Yeah, exactly.
And I get back from Austin on like a Monday night. And of course, you get like old school, and so my mom and them were like, they don't even mess with the answering machine anymore because it's all messages for me for the most part. So they're like, hey, there's like 20 messages on the answer machine. So I sit there and it's all these coaches calling. Well, keep messing it up. Congratulations, here you committed to Texas. I'm like, what?
Oh. Like,
and then like this coach after coach after coach, Hawaii coach says, heard you went on and committed to Texas. Just so you know, we're canceling your visit. We can't be sending you out here and so I'm like, what are you talking about? So I called my coach. I'm like, hey man, I didn't commit. And they're like, we don't know how. We're like, Hicks, we don't understand. I mean, we don't know how this news and so I'm like, and one of the reporters had called. And so I called him. I'm like, where did you get this information? They're like, what information? I'm like, basically, that's just what we heard. So now it's this conspiracy of who said I committed when I never did.
Right.
So then I think that was just God's way of saying, you're going to Texas. So like a week later, I'm just like, I talked to my parents and my dad's like, you can't beat the education. It's close. Their fear was that I was going to go off somewhere and they wouldn't be able to go to like 1 or 2 games a year.
Sure. Yeah.
But like I said, my cousin was graduating from UT. I already had an aunt who already graduated. I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Leander at the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My mom, the owner of my mom's company that she worked for, his daughter swam for UT and lived in Round Rock with her husband who also swam for UT. So it's just like like this support system was already there.
Sure. Yeah. That's got to be a good, obviously, like you said, with everything around it and everything, seems like all these things just keep pointing you towards Austin.
Yeah. Of course, when my aunt found out that I was considering A&M, she made a surprise visit to my house. And she's like, we need to talk, and sat me down in my room and talked to me for an hour. Yes. So I was like, okay. So that's how it happened. It's strange. It's one of those strange things. I went from them being a consideration to really being a consideration.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Being the best option and the best choice I ever made.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, of course, I had no idea, and you were older, and I was younger, so the little times that we interacted, I didn't really try to get too much into what was going on in your business or anything back then. We would talk about football and how my season was going or whatever. That was kind of my peak then, so it was all downhill from there. But wow, that's crazy. That's a very interesting story. Like it's orangewoods.com. It's like a Texas like recruiting website, message board and all that. And I've been a member for that for years. And I put something on there that I was going to be talking to you today. So I guarantee if anybody listens to this, they're going to be like, have no idea that, the Billy Sims connection. And, I knew about the Colorado thing. Obviously, since we know each other personally, I knew that, but I don't think anybody else from, an outsider knew that you were considering Colorado that hard. And with the coaching change, everything that happened, and then going from your favorite to like, now they're not interested, man, that had to be a crazy thing for you. But okay, well, that's cool. All right. Well, here's the next thing. This kind of more generic thing, but I was just kind of curious because you played in a lot of places. I mean, you played in the Rose Bowl, you played at Kyle Field, you played, even Lubbock, that horrible dump of a town. But what was the loudest place that you played in? What was the loudest road stadium?
Ooh, man, it would have to be, sadly enough, it would have to be oh man. When you said that, I was about to say it would be between, I don't know. And this is why we played Virginia in Virginia in 96.
Oh, okay.
After, so Phil,
Forgot about that.
This is after Field has kicked the 95 yard, I mean 95, kicked the 50, I think it was a 51 yarder.
Oh yeah,
in 1995 to beat them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so now we have to go to Virginia in 96 to play them at home. And you talking about, and it's at night.
Oh, there you go.
And they were out for revenge. And I remember that being loud. I mean, that was loud.
Okay.
But I mean, you got, the Cotton Bowl is always loud. Texas OU weekend.
Sure.
I mean, it's even though it's like sometimes it's only half the stadium cheering. But when it's all, 70, 80,000, whatever it is, when we played there,
yeah.
I mean, it's loud. And then, Cal feels loud because they're obnoxious. So that's a tough one because I can tell you that Nebraska game 98 was loud. Sure. I mean, man, the loudest is just so many games that I can think of where when you're out there is just loud. And it's usually the games that are a little bit more, maybe have a little bit more to ride on it, a little bit more iconic. And sure. That's why, I wouldn't want to, I can't leave Texas OU out. Playing A&M in A&M, it's loud. But Darryl K. Royal gets extremely loud. Nebraska game of 99, when we're making the last stand to keep them out of the end zone.
I watched that when I was in the hospital. When I was sick earlier this year, there's not a whole lot you can do there. So I had, I didn't have my phone charger for like the first 2-3 days. I had to have a friend bring one to me because I was like, looks like I'm going to be here for a minute. So if you could bring a charger by, that would be great. So I watched that whole game. And I remember watching it live, the year before 98, when you had that incredible game. I can still remember sitting in my house upstairs by myself on a little TV with the door shut because I kept screaming and yelling, and my parents were, downstairs. So I couldn't help it. It was just like, it seemed like every tackle you were there. So, and obviously Ricky Williams had that great game. It was, pretty much like the statement game for you guys that season, Mac Brown's first year. So that was fun. But I still, it's a shame to say this, but I have still yet to be or attend, I should say, a Texas OU game, which is crazy because my birthday is October 12th. So the game is usually super close to my birthday. Although I had one chance to go to the game in 2008. A couple friends from high school who are diehard OU fans got tickets, and they're like, well, it's $200-something bucks. It's on the OU side. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not, no. I was like, if I'm going, I got to sit on the right side. I'm not going to be the one person in burnt orange surrounded by, I was like, that's not going to work. So but I definitely.
Well, it would have worked out good for you because we won in 08.
No, that was a great game. Oh, that was probably one of the better games in the series history. So that's what I get for not going. But so okay, you kind of touched on it there. But there's another thing I was going to ask you: the craziest fans, like the most hostile, just like you said, obnoxious with A&M. It seems like no matter where you guys go, there's always that huge target on your back because you are Texas. So if you go to Lubbock, there's all that hate and animosity, or you go to College Station, wherever you go, you're going to just get it, just so much. So who's had the worst fans?
A&M was probably the worst overall fans, followed by, this is going to be surprising, Oklahoma State.
Really? Okay.
And in most cases, there's a buffer between the sideline and the
oh yeah, and Oklahoma State, you're literally, the sideline is like this big.
So there's
right on top of you.
Yes. So their student section is right there.
You can literally hear everything
with those freaking paddles.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
right there behind you. And it's just like, oh my gosh.
And they just do that the entire game nonstop.
Oh, yes. It's such a ass whip. So between that, of course, A&M fans, and that's, I would say OU fans too, but the only interaction you have with the OU fans is the freaking tunnel. So that's why the
tunnel's on their
tunnel,
side of the stadium, sure.
and that's why the tunnel's covered now.
Yeah. Getting stuff thrown
Before
at
it
you.
used to not, yes. And that's the reason why they had to put the fence up. Before, the fence wasn't high enough, so they would sit there and throw stuff at you.
Oh, wow.
Batteries and all sorts of stuff.
Oh.
Then they finally put the fence up high, so now they couldn't throw anything. Then they covered it. And part of the reason why they covered it, I think, is just because of the allure of walking out of the tunnel, because you can't see who's walking out until you're about halfway down the ramp. If you're on the other end of the stadium, then you can start seeing who's coming out. Mm-hmm. Before that, you can't. So it's kind of cool.
Sure.
But yeah, before it was covered and all that other stuff, man, those OU, gosh. Just
I can only imagine.
That would be the A&M, OU, and Oklahoma State would probably be. I mean, the Tech fans are Tech fans, but
you gotta duck the tortillas.
Yeah, but it's just, they don't really.
It's Tech. Yeah.
It's Tech. So, but if it wasn't for the Oklahoma State student section being right behind you and with those paddles, and you get then they just give you the business the entire game.
Sure.
Then they wouldn't have made the list, but they make the list because of that.
All right. Well, now I want to kind of bring it to current times. With your being a former athlete, being a current head coach, current high school coach, the NIL, the world of NIL that the world of college football is in. Now, I think the players should have got something. Now, I don't know if it's to this extreme. I don't know if the NCAA planned on it going this crazy, this fast, or this far, because it just made zero sense to me from an outsider. Like, if you ran into Mac Brown somewhere, and you and let's say a friend that you had on the team were going to Taco Bell to get something to eat because you're college students, you don't have any money, and coach sees you and is like, oh, well, don't go to Taco Bell. It's food's terrible. I want my guys to eat something healthy. Here's $50. Go to the grocery store and get you something healthy. That's a huge violation. Oh my God, what a horrible thing. But you can go to a bowl game and get like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of free stuff, which makes zero sense. Like, the coach can't give you money to go get groceries, but if you go to a bowl game, you can get literally like 10 or 20 grand worth of free things. And that made zero sense to me. So I always thought players should get something. I mean, the stadiums, now with Texas, it's 100,000. It's filled. Everybody's wearing a shirt or a hat. Their dog has a Longhorn collar. Their baby's in a onesie. Like, everything that family owns has burnt orange. They got a sticker on the car. They got the thing on the. I mean, they put so much money into that program. It's just making millions upon millions of dollars. The coach makes $5 million, and you guys, who are the ones that everybody are coming to see, don't get anything. But I think the pendulum is swung way too far. It's like, it's basically almost like free agency in the NFL. So what are your thoughts on this whole, since you're, like I said, you're a current high school coach, the recruiting process now with this NIL stuff, like what is your thoughts on this crazy new world that college football finds itself in now?
Oh man. Well, I mean, the first thing is that, golly, just think what I could have been doing when I was playing. I mean, I would have had a nice little nest egg, I felt like.
Right?
I would have started life off really, really well. Here's the deal. I think if you go back and look at where it started, and it's all started because of the O'Bannon twins.
Yep.
So, and that was their leg they stood on, is that you have video games, you have apparel, you have tickets, you have all this stuff that the university is making millions off of. Granted, our education in total may cost, let's say, $100,000. Let's just say it's $100,000.
Yeah.
So we're getting paid $100,000, and that's inclusive of room, board, food, whatever. Which, mind you, at the time I was playing, we only got 2 meals. You got lunch and you got dinner.
Wow.
Breakfast was on your own. So the NCAA only allowed 2 meals where under your scholarship, which was lunch and dinner, and then breakfast. We were able to get. The university paid for our breakfast meal plan, but if you went and got breakfast, you had to go into the student cafeteria to eat breakfast. It wasn't in our athletic dining hall because it wasn't allowed.
Wow.
And so it was a series of events that occurred, and it started with the O'Bannons, and they won that lawsuit saying that, you're using our likeness, our name and likeness, and is really to sell all this stuff and make money, and we get nothing out of it.
Yeah, that's why they stopped making the video game a few years ago.
Yes.
I think 2013 was the last year they made it, and I think they're coming out with the next year now that NIL has happened and everything. So yeah, that was one of my favorite games to play.
Yeah, and so then all college football, all that stuff ended because now they were going to have to basically pay each individual athlete money. Because here's the problem: in order for them to be in the game, they had to pay the universities because the universities are trademarked.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, true. Yep.
So in order for them to use a university, they had to pay that university. No different than if you go back and watch some of the NBA games. Jordan was not used in a lot of those games.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah,
his name was not used. His number was used, but his name, and he didn't look exactly like him. He looked kind of like him. It's because Jordan did not allow them to use his name and likeness, really. So this is where all of it kind of starts. And then somebody sues the NCAA saying basically, if you want to stop our athletes from having access to donors and getting money, then you need to be able to supply them more. You got to give them more than 2 meals.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's when the next thing that occurs is that now we're going to give them, they have 24-hour access to the meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
So then they increase the number of meals and stuff they could have. They increase their per diem. And so they were starting to do these things to take out the ability for donors to circumvent the system.
Mm-hmm.
And then now and I don't know where they went from that to this NIL. And I think the problem it's kind of like if you just think of the legalization of marijuana, they're just like, you know what? We can't really police it. It still happens. We're tired of taking time, effort, and money of trying to stop it. So let's make it legal, and however y'all want to do this, you can do it.
Sure.
Without any parameters. So now they've opened up Pandora's box.
Exactly.
And I don't think that they really understood, and that's why all these college coaches are saying the same thing. They're like, they opened up this box without any rules, just basically saying,
exactly.
As long as there is a contract in place, then these kids can go out and do whatever they want.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest problem. There's just, like you said, there's no rules, there's no parameters, there's no, it's basically like the kid. I don't know if you're aware or paying attention to it. The kid that won the Bolitnikoff Award last year from Pitt, that just went to USC, that almost went to Texas. Like basically, he was saying like USC offered him like a house and like, I don't know, 6 or 7 figures. And of course, they're like, oh, well, no, we didn't do that or anything. And sure enough, he ends up going to USC. Last week, he made his official decision to transfer. But it's like, I mean, look at Texas. I mean, Bijan Robinson, the running back, phenomenal player. And from everything I hear, he's like, you know, even a better person off the field, like super great guy. Like it checks every box you would want. But he's driving a freaking Lambo, like a $300,000 sports car. I mean, good for him. I'm not hating on it, but I'm just like, wow. I mean, okay, cool. I mean, do you, bro?
Yeah. So now what they've done is open it up. And it realized it started pretty slow. It started pretty slow.
Yeah,
and
I did.
Now people have really started to get creative and how, I mean, just like the one that still blows me away was the agreement that this I think the sports memorabilia company or whatever signed with the offensive lineman of UT. I don't know if you heard about it, but
no, I haven't heard about this one. I heard about the pancake deal.
It's 6. It's like 6 UT linemen, or I think it's up to 6.
Mm-hmm.
They get $50,000 a year, and for 4 years, as long as they adhere to the agreement of like, signing deals and showing up to, requested places and whatever the deal is.
Mm-hmm.
They get $50,000 a year. Well, before this was announced, we were recruiting like one of the top offensive linemen that was in the transfer portal.
Okay.
He commits to Texas. The next day, the O-line deal comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me he didn't already know about this deal? Because it wasn't made official until the day after he had already committed to UT.
Okay.
And so now, these linemen get $50,000. I mean, on top of whatever else, $50,000 a year. As long as they
go. Job.
No.
Not bad for a side hustle.
And it I don't know. I'm indifferent because they needed to do something, because
I agree. Something should have been done.
Regardless if kids were on scholarship or not, Pell Grant or whatever, there was still a lot of athletes living in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, performing at a high level, needing to try to get to that next level so they could, provide for themselves and for their family. And so there was so much other avenues, other resources that could have been used to help a lot of these students,
Sure.
But now what a lot of them are coming back and saying is now there's even a bigger discrepancy that's occurring in the locker rooms, and I can't remember who it was that spoke up on it, but they were talking about how, they played with Colt. Colt didn't need NIL money. Colt had a, brand new truck and whatever else. And so he was already fine.
Yeah.
There was so many other kids, but there was still a discrepancy of wealth within the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, essentially that's going to be anywhere you go, I mean, there in the NBA, there's a discrepancy of wealth. You can't go gambling with Jordan if you don't have, Jordan type money.
Yeah, exactly.
He just has too much.
Yeah.
But what I've kind of read is that now it's just causing even more of a discrepancy in the locker room, because now you got kids that are like, where's mine?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. What if you're like a third team linebacker that only plays special teams and you don't really get any run? No one's going to come at you with anything. So you're still stuck in the same boat. Whereas, the guy that's starting has, a deal with, some restaurant or, whatever the case may be. And it's getting, like you said, $50 grand a year. And he's like you said, he's in the same spot you're in. He's able to help out his family and get money that way. But then if you're just not good enough to play, then you're just kind of stuck. I mean, you're just basically whatever the scholarship grants you and gives you, that's pretty much what you have, and that's it. So yeah, that could definitely bring some resentment and some issues in the locker room for sure.
So now, what are you playing for? Are you playing for team? Are you playing? And now, if if a coach sits you out, now, coach, you're messing with my money. I'm not getting enough looks. I'm not getting enough touches.
Yep.
I'm not getting enough plays. I mean, if I'm going to get me a good NIL, I need to be out there playing more.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're holding now you're holding me back.
Yep. Yeah, and that kind of brings me into the next thing I was wanted to ask you: transfer portal. Now, obviously, in your day, coaches pretty much had you by the what. Well, okay, you can't go here, you can't go here, you can't. Okay, 5 of those schools right off the list. Nope, not happening. And you're like, well, what if like one of those 5 is one you really wanted to go to? What if it was closer to home and your family's having, maybe you have a family member that's sick or something like that, and you're like, say in your case, let's say you're in Boulder and your family member's sick in Dallas and you can't get back there as often, and you're like, well, you know what, TCU, SMU, it is what it is. I'll go there. And they're like, nope, sorry, not gonna happen. So are you pro transfer portal because it gives the athletes more flexibility and things to move around? Because it seems like, especially with quarterbacks, nowadays, it's like if they don't start right away, they're gone. It's like if they don't get any run right out of the gate, it's like they don't want to sit around and wait 2 years, red shirt, and sit and finally their red shirt sophomore year or junior year, they're finally hitting the field. It's like you don't see that anymore. And there's some guys, they just transfer from place to place to place trying to play, and they can't. But that it gives them that freedom. What are your thoughts on the portal? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or is it kind of a little bit of both?
It's bad. It's bad.
Okay.
And so before this whole transfer portal thing opened up, the way it worked is that you could transfer, but NCAA had certain rules. You couldn't, if you transferred within, if I recall, if you transferred within your conference, that was an automatic 2-year sit out.
Yep.
If you transferred within your division 1, division 2, whatever. Mm-hmm. So if you went from a division 1 school to a division 1 school, you had to sit out 1 year. Well, if it was a kid that hadn't used their redshirt year, then they would use their redshirt year as their transfer year, and they still would have their eligibility. Okay. So, and that's the way it worked. So you still had kids that transferred. The problem is that it was more costly. So it wasn't just, I'm just going to up and go. I mean, it took a lot more thought in it because there was a lot more at stake. I mean, you could end up potentially having to sit out 2 years. Well, you don't have 2 years, so the ones that would transfer, it had to be calculated. You had, and then you had to know that, okay, if I do this, then what am I giving up?
Exactly.
Now they don't have to give up anything.
That's
and
true. They can just up and go.
A lot. Yeah. And what a lot of coaches and high school coaches, and this is where it's killing high school players. And you may not see it, but a lot of the colleges won't claim it, but they are recruiting through the portal. They're recruiting through the portal, and all it is the JUCO rule all over again.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. You had let's say a Division II receiver. He's 6'2", 185, runs 4.4. He was All-American at Sam Houston State. And then you have a high school receiver, probably about the same,
okay,
same build or whatever. So you have two of basically the same guys, but one of them has already been an All-American, and he's in the portal, and you get him for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's already polished. He's already
You know
where
what
you're
you're
going to
getting,
have
sure.
to.
Yeah.
Where with the high school guy, you're going to have to get him in the way. There's going to be some training, some more that may have to go involved. They're all not going to come out, like Marvin Mims Jr., which I had to coach against in high school.
Uh-huh.
Or the receiver from Rockwall who's at Ohio State. Or I can go get this guy who's at the transfer portal who's already an All-American.
Yep.
That can come in right now and play and give me 2 to 3 years because of the super senior and all that stuff.
Yep.
So the super senior and the portal is killing high schoolers because colleges can now go there and try to find. I mean, they have 1,100 kids in there.
Wow, that many?
It's some. I think it's 1,000. I think it's over 1,000 kids in the portal.
That's insane. I had no idea it was that high. I mean, there's nowhere near that amount of people, there's nowhere near that amount of places to go. I mean,
no.
I mean, good Lord, I didn't know, no idea it was that many. That wow.
And then you have your grad transfers, and that's where it all started. I mean, if you think about it, and that's where this whole, I think, idea of transferring for something better started with Kyler and Baker. Well, Kyler had to sit out a year. Take that back.
Yeah.
But no, like Baker and the quarterback from Alabama. Who was it when he transferred? Wasn't Tua? Was it Tua? No. Who transferred to?
He transferred away from Alabama?
I'm trying to remember, but he Hurd.
Oh, yeah.
Jalen.
Jalen Hurd went to Oklahoma. Yeah, sure. There you go.
So grad transfer from Oklahoma to, from Alabama to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So you hear those stories.
Sure.
And those are kind of no-brainers.
Mm-hmm.
But what a lot of coaches are realizing is that now this idea of I'm going to stay and I'm going to fight for my position, or I'm going to prove that I'm better than the guys in front of us, is not the case anymore.
No, not at all. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it just seems like they just bolt. If they don't start right away, it's like they're just gone. Like, oh, I'll go here or I'll go there.
All right. So, okay, full ride.
There's no promise that it'll work out either.
Yeah, full ride to TCU. Man, I'm not really getting a whole bunch of looks, but oh man, San Diego State says they want me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. My buddy at San Diego State's like, hey man, you need to come here.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so you're getting a lot of fluctuation from not just within conference. Really, it's more from your different divisions. Your D1 and D2 guys are now transferring and moving up and down so they can play and make a name for themselves and get their NIL money. See, it's still, to me, and that's where the problem is, it's all coming down to the fact of they want to go somewhere where they can make money.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's turning into almost like quasi NFL almost, like you said. I mean, it's all about, is it for team or is it for money? And no one's going to say no to money. I mean, especially if you're in a situation where you can use it yourself, your family, you got a, maybe you got a little, let's say you have a sibling that might, have some medical issues, special needs. I mean, there's all sorts of things that people are going through that nobody knows about. So, I mean, I'm not going to hate on anybody for trying to better their situation. It's just, I think it's the NCAA just went like, hey, there's the NIL door. It's open. All right, go for it. And there's just there's nothing. It's just like the Wild West, basically. And all these deals are happening and things are it's just like even Xavier Worthy, the freshman receiver for Texas last year. I mean, I've read a lot of things where people came hard after him because it's like, hey man, is Sark going to be there in a couple of years? Is, this team went 5-7, you know who your quarterback is, come here, you can start, this guy's established, come here, in 2 years you go to the NFL. And when I heard that, I was just like, well, it sucked being a Texas fan if he left, and thankfully he stayed. But I was just like, if he did leave, I wouldn't have been that bad because I'm like, it's his choice. He can do what he wants. And if this is better for him and he can get some money out of it, then, it sucked for Texas, but that's what happens when you have seasons like that. And you can go to some place that can promise like, hey, we got everything's established. You can fit in here. We just had a senior leave. You can come in and fill this role, and we could use this just like this. And everything sounds great. So why would you say no?
Well, prime example is Ewers.
There you go.
So
Yep.
you're telling me that, and this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Ohio State for a year. I'm gonna get my $1 million deal. Because remember, as soon as he committed, he got $1 million NIL deal.
Yep.
I'm gonna go to Ohio State. And there's really no reason for him. I still never really understood what was your reason for leaving.
Yeah.
Stay a year, get my, whatever the $1 million, and then I'm gonna transfer to Texas. And again, there was no repercussions for him doing that.
None at all.
There was none. He didn't lose a year. Nothing adverse happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And the whole purpose, I know. And here's the other thing that the NCAA did, and that was the right move. But then they went too far when they opened up the portal. The issue was that athletes were going to schools and coaches were leaving after a year.
Mm-hmm.
So they would recruit, they would mold, they would, wine and dine these kids to come to my school.
Mm-hmm.
And then, hey, I got a better offer. And in some cases, they would sign in February, and that coach would go to another school before the season even started.
Yep.
So that's where it started, where kids were held to a higher standard. You sign this contract, you have to stay. If you want to transfer, it's going to cost you 2 years. Is that fair? When a coach can just up and leave in the middle of a season, being fired, regardless if they were fired or not. Now you're making me have to stay when I don't want to, because now that coach may be going to USC and say, hey, I recruited you. I want you to come over here with me. And you're telling that kid who has that relationship with that coach, no, you can't go. So that's when it opened up to say, if your coach, and I can't remember how it was exactly set up, but basically if the coach that recruited you left, then you had the opportunity to stay or to find another school.
Yep.
And then it morphed into what it is now.
Yeah. Yep. So can I ask you one more thing? I know you got to go, and I've taken up enough of your time, but how do you pay attention to Texas? Do you still go to games? Are you still, obviously you played there, but you have a job, you've got a family, you got a million things going on. Are you still,
I'm still orange blood, man.
And
orange blood for life.
Okay. And
I'm an orange blood for life. So it's, I am. I follow, of course, I follow pretty much all of our athletics.
Yeah.
I don't get a chance to get down to the games like I used to. I still go to Texas OU.
Mm-hmm.
So I make that game.
Well, if you ever have an extra ticket this year, you know how to get a hold of me.
I do.
Hey, I'll hold you to that, man.
Okay. You got to fight my wife usually for that spare ticket.
Exactly right.
We went down, and then if it's a bowl game, if it's a good bowl game, like we went to the Sugar Bowl the year we played Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we'll go do things like that. If they're playing in the Cotton Bowl, we'll go to the Cotton Bowl. So we follow basketball. We try to follow. Well, I've tried to follow as much of the UT sports. A buddy of mine invited me out, so we went to the Texas OU baseball tournament that was out at Globe Life.
Oh yeah, it's past weekend. Sure. Yep.
Well, the Big 12 tournament was this weekend. The Texas.
Oh, you're talking about
tournament.
Okay, yeah, sure.
They moved it to Globe Life. So that was in March, April.
Yeah.
So we went out and watched 2 of the 3 games. And so, no, I mean, if I could make every game, I'd go to every football game.
Sure.
My parents still follow it. They went out to a couple of baseball games this year.
Oh, that's
Went
cool.
out to Austin. Went out to Austin to a couple of baseball games, and so my wife's parents, they probably follow more than I do.
Sure.
So no, we are Longhorns through and through. I didn't be able to make the Letterman's weekend because that's when we're in the spring football. So that's another thing that sucks. I miss going to Letterman's weekend, but
Sure.
no, I mean if it's something UT, then I'm trying to find a way or be there or be involved or watch it or something.
Sure. All right. Well, I'll leave you with this. Give me hope for this season. What can, I mean, after the disaster that was last year with all the second half leads getting blown, give me hope for this year. What is I mean, the whole Texas is back thing, everybody makes fun of that because it seems like they get hype and then it doesn't happen. And I just think there's a lot of question marks. Offensive line, quarterback. I mean, give me something to get excited about, Hicks.
The renovations to the stadium are nice. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I hear, the fan experience is awesome. It's what I've been told. I mean, it is a lot of question marks. Our teams that I played for always had a lot of question marks. You just weren't sure, other than, of course, Ricky, of what we had. And so I'm hoping that with the adding of some of the players that we have another year with Sark, not sure. I don't get caught up in recruiting classes and stars and all that because I was there when we had highly touted recruits and they couldn't cut the mustard. And we've seen 4 and 5 star guys that just can't, just are not playing at the level they need to on Saturdays. So for me, I don't care if we have the number 1 recruiting class, because how many times has the team that had the number 1 recruiting class won the national championship? I mean, I would say not as many times as you think.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, let's take A&M has had like the top 5 recruiting class, have had a top 5 recruiting class in the last several years, and they hadn't finished in the top 5.
Exactly.
So what is that telling you?
Yeah.
Is it what recruiting service is telling you that these kids are good, but they don't go out there and perform? So there's a disconnect, and that's where the biggest thing that I have a problem with is that there is a disconnect at our university.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been thrown in our face for so long. And everybody's like, well, y'all didn't have anyone drafted. It's like, I know.
Yeah.
And we didn't, if I'm an NFL scout, what am I seeing? Everything that's put out there is that Texas doesn't develop their players. Well, you see it on Saturdays.
Yep.
You see it on Saturdays. And so that's the hard thing to watch. As a former player, it's hard to see that. It's hard to watch, and you don't know where it is. I feel like as a coach, I mean, the coaches I feel like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, they're putting in the work, they're putting in the time. I feel like the players are putting in the time. There's just something, and it's just unknown, whatever that something is that has allowed these things to happen.
Sure.
And so my biggest thing is to go out there and compete and play at a high level and coach at a high level. And I think that's the bottom line for me, is that just go out there and perform on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're putting in the work and doing the things we need to. but it is something when an Iowa State has beat you 3 out of 5 years with athletes that you never even recruited.
Exactly. Yeah. That as a fan, that's what I've noticed. It's like, and another high school friend of mine, I've talked about this a few times. It's like kids that are being recruited, like the kids that you're coaching now, right? 16, 17, 18 years old, don't know what Texas was with Vince and Colts and all that. They were too little. All they've seen is Texas be average, above average, below average. And that's it. So they've seen places like TCU have better seasons and Baylor. It just makes me sick to my stomach to watch Baylor. I mean, my God, when I was in high school, our Lake Highlands teams could have beat Baylor. They were horrible. They were awful. And now they're winning conference championships. They're ranked in the top 10. They had a Heisman Trophy winner a while ago with RG3. It just makes me sick. And it's just like, I don't get it. And I mean, we could talk about that for forever and a day and, everything, but I don't want to hold you up anymore, man. I know you probably got your kid probably going, Dad, let's go. Who are you talking to? Let's go. I want to go home. But I can't say thank you enough, Hicks. Really and truly, I can't even put a sentence together. How thankful I am that you did this for me. Like I said, you get nothing out of this whatsoever. I'm trying to do this to try to jump into something, into a career. So for you to take the time out and your free time to do this for me, it really means the world. Thank you.
Man, I enjoy it. Thank you. And again, if it's a topic that comes up and you're like, hey, would you mind talking about this? I'll make time to do it. So this would have to be
for sure. I got a list of stuff here. There's a few things we could have, like Texas going to the SEC. What all about that? I mean, there's a few more things we could have got into for sure, but I was just really, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on all these things. And it was really cool. The recruiting story was very cool right off the bat. That's probably my favorite part, is not knowing all the stuff that went on behind the scenes and how you ended up in Texas and everything like that. So that was super cool. But yeah, I mean, I got your number. I'll hit you up, man. Don't be surprised if I say like, hey, if you ever want to do this again, I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I don't have a girlfriend, Hicks. I got nothing but time. I got nothing but free time. So if you can make the time, then I got nothing but time for you, sir. So definitely we'll do this again, and we'll do it again. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Anthony. Have a great day, and we'll do this again soon.
All right, man. Thanks, Rick.
I appreciate it.
Okay.